Hey, welcome back, fifth grade. Glad to get back into our learning for this final quarter of fifth grade. Welcome especially to the students from 5B who will be joining us for our language arts instruction in Mrs. On's classroom for reading, writing, and grammar for this last quarter. And Mrs. Berry is going to take on all of the math instruction for this last quarter. We felt like that would allow us to give a little bit more attention to each of you in those areas. So welcome, 5B. Glad to have you with us for our learning. Wanted to just kind of get you into our learning. For this last quarter, we are going to be focusing primarily on informational text or nonfiction text. We had already started that in both classrooms before we left for schooling at home time. As we wrapped up our Bob time, we started moving more into informational text, and that really is going to be the focus of our learning for the remainder of fifth grade. A few things that are a little bit different about reading informational text or nonfiction text that we want to really focus on, and one of them really is that for people who are not students, who are out of school or are adults, informational text, nonfiction, is probably the most commonly used kind of reading. There are a lot of people who enjoy reading fiction. I do. Many of you do. But a lot of adults don't find that they read much fiction anymore. But pretty much everybody needs to read informational text. So it's a super important kind of reading. And so we're going to really work on developing those skills in the next couple of weeks. Just thinking about informational text, it really has to do with needing to know something. For example, something's broken and I don't want to throw it away, but I need to know how to fix it. Sometimes we might look for a YouTube video, but very often that's going to have some text to go along with it, or we're going to find something that gives us directions on how to fix that thing. That's an example of informational text. We need to know how to do something. Other times it's a want to know. Right now there's just a lot of conversation about how our government works. We have stay-at-home orders, and should that be, should that not be? What about those laws? Who has the right to make those laws? Should just our federal government make those laws, or should each individual state make those laws? Well, we start to really want to know, well, what really can we do? How is our country set up, and how are our laws made? We want to know. And in times like this, we start to even feel like we need to know. So again, we need to read informational text. A few things that we recognize about informational text is it sometimes can be more challenging to read. It sometimes will use vocabulary that we're not as familiar with, words that we say, I've never heard of that before. And it just is often a little bit more difficult to read. So we have some strategies that we like to use that can help us with that. We're going to be using a number of sources. We'll be going back to your social studies newspapers that you had used with Mrs. Berry in the afternoons previously, but we're going to use that as a great example of informational text. You're learning how our country came to be, how it was decided, how laws and other things were going to be made for our country. So we'll use that as an example of our informational text. We'll be reading articles that kind of go along with some of the things that you're learning in your social studies lessons through that newspaper. And another example of informational text that you are using a lot right now is the directions for how to do your schooling at home. You're having to read a lot of directions. And sometimes you think, I wish my teacher was just here to tell me what to do. We wish we could be there to help you know what to do too. But it actually is kind of a natural opportunity to really build our skills for reading informational text. When you have to read the directions and figure out how to do something, That's just a really natural way to use informational text. So a few strategies that I wanted to share with you to help you as you're reading your social studies newspaper, as you are reading the directions for how to do your schooling at home, how to understand the articles that we assign to you on ReadWorks. A few strategies that can help you. I'm just going to flip my camera around here. Good. Okay, so much for that.